Hello, this is Rob Woods and welcome to episode 8 of the Fundraising Bright Spots Podcast. This is the show for anyone who works in charity fundraising and who wants ideas and inspiration for how to really enjoy their job, raise more money and make a bigger difference. And in this episode, we're talking all about the skills and mindset it takes to grow your major gift income. And we're talking to someone who really knows what they're talking about, because over a 5-year period, Tony Gaston grew major donor income at EMMS International from pretty much scratch to over £200,000 in his first year to gifts totalling £2 million last year. And just to place it in context, this is actually the second half of my recent interview with Tony. The reason being, I always try to keep each episode to half an hour or less so that most people can fit that into their commute or to their lunch hour. But Tony had so much wise advice that I couldn't bear to stop recording. So basically, today's episode is the second half of my conversation with Tony, but if you like this one, I really recommend you go back and check out episode 7 as well, as he shares some really inspiring examples to help bring to life certain distinctions about his job that have made all the difference. For now, I'd like to introduce you to today's episode, which took place the day before Tony was due to fly out to see one of his current charities projects in Uganda. We pick up the conversation at a point where we've been exploring how the beliefs you have about fundraising make a huge difference to your confidence when talking about large gifts. Tony has just been describing how thrilled and grateful his charity supporters are to have made donations to the charity. And it's fairly clear to me that knowing this makes Tony feel all the more confident in making future approaches to the donors, because he's seen how great this process is for them as well as for the beneficiaries.
This episode of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast is brought to you by the Bright Spot Members Club. As a practical alternative to one-off conferences and courses whose impact can fade all too quickly, the Members Club is an online resource that gives you ongoing access to a whole library of video training courses, monthly coaching webinars and live training events. It's all designed to help you learn, enjoy your job and raise more money. To join the 300 fundraisers already in the club, or just to find out more, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk.
Part of the challenge of this is early in your career, you may not yet have met many people who are that unequivocally glowing about it. So going in for your early asks, an extra thing that makes it harder is your experience of life is that if someone's given away losing or giving away £50,000 of their own money, they may be feeling poorer, literally and emotionally poorer. Whereas once you've been doing this a while, you notice how truly it satisfies their human needs to contribute and how great that feels. And that also has a side benefit that all your future relationships with donors and asks and offers to donors are easier because you know you're offering them something great rather than taking something away from them. So certainly on our course, we help people get over those emotional hang-ups about the ask by just tuning into the examples in their own life that giving is good for people. Giving is good for me, giving is good for you, and it's also good for someone who's quite a lot richer than us. So focusing on the fact that the act of giving a tool makes the giver happier, not sadder, usually helps with that. But I don't know what other tips you would have to help someone speed up that confidence that I'm not taking, I'm enriching someone's life if I help them.
I do wonder sometimes if we sometimes feel like we're asking for the money, and you know that just should that really complicates things. If you think I'm asking you to give 50,000 to me, then absolutely, I'd have a lot of problems with that. But you're not, you know, and I think if you genuinely have the integrity where you're saying, actually, I believe in this organization, and I wish I had 100 grand that I could give to this because it is amazing, and having that kind of passion and integrity that this is something that if I had the money, I would do this as well. And I think it's just saying, okay, look, you're here, and you know, this organization's over here. You should have a look at what this organization is doing because it's truly exceptional. And just, I guess, moving towards that. But yeah, it's definitely something that helps.
Yeah, and there's so many elements to this, and the first big strong one I think is to just to understand the fundamental truth that giving is good for people. So if you help someone give more to something they care about, they're going to be emotionally up on the deal rather than down on it. I think that is a big first bit of it. But another bit of it is, I agree, the confidence in the amazing difference your project makes, and that helps you be off the fence. It helps you be more bold and confident in the way you talk about it. And the language, I just noticed the language you used there about something being truly exceptional. That's different from early in my career when I might have said, I really think you should visit this project. It's making a difference. Yeah. And a choice of language, the bolder words, which you can justify, but B, your tone of voice, all of that comes from what you believe about whether donors gain or not, and what you believe about whether this project makes a big difference. And obviously, that's one of the reasons your organization is smart, to allow you tomorrow to fly out and fill up with that conviction.
That's it. You have to work on your passion. And I think if you're sitting behind your desk all day, every day, and you're just looking at your emails and you're not actually embedding yourself in the organization that you're working in, I think it's going to be hard to really believe that and have that passion. And I think that what I mean by working in that passion is, take the time to go out. It's not wasted time. It's very valuable just to go out and see the projects, to meet the people that are being impacted, to see the difference. Even if it's a university where you're seeing, okay, what are the research projects that are going on? How is that having a difference in the world? Environmental projects, whatever it might be, whatever the cause of the charity is, there will be things in there that are going to bring passion about, and it's just really locking into those, and even giving what you can towards it as well, and experiencing that from the side of from a donor's perspective is also, I think, quite key.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. So given that the listener's salary may be considerably less than what they might earn in a commercial sector for some equivalent type of skills, you're observing, even if they could just give a one-off donation or £5 a month to their charity, in addition to the difference that makes, you're saying that can have a knock-on effect on your own feelings and confidence as a fundraiser to stand by your product. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I would never ever advise a director to say to their staff, you must give to our organization or anything like that. But just having that sense of, okay, well, I'm also giving to this. I don't know. For me, it kind of, although I would never say it gives me the confidence that, well, I believe in this enough to give to it. So if I'm going to ask you, Rob, to give to it, maybe I'm not a hypocrite, but am I being true to myself if I'm not willing to also give? And if not, why not? Could be a fair question that you could ask me.
Yeah, and apart from anything else, if you do that, give that one-off gift, or try for 3 months giving two or £5 or £10 a month, it can be a really interesting experiment to see what kind of thank you letters you get.
Yeah.
Do you get a thank you call? So as some level of mystery shopper to experience what is this service like, probably is going to be fascinating, isn't it?
It is, and actually, what can be really interesting as well is if you're married, you can put it in your partner's name, because you can always just try and see what it's like from their point of view, and ask them, how did you feel when you received that, and just get their feedback, because sometimes being so close to the organization, it's really hard to move yourself away, but your partner has the ability to see that, and also probably knows you well enough that they can maybe speak a few truths that might the everyday person may not be willing to tell you. So it can be quite a useful trick as well.
Yeah, wise words. Certainly worth someone having a think about whether they might like to try that. I've got another question, because I've got a memory of, I think this was probably day 2 or day 3 of that very first program you came on with me.
Okay.
At the point in the day when people had a chance to share something they'd done differently, or some victory. I remember you telling a really interesting story, and please fill in the details, but the gist of it was meeting a donor who was potentially curious, so let's say £50,000, £75,000 they could invest, and they asked you to put together 2 or 3 proposals, And
yes.
for whatever reason, you chose not to send them a 17-page wordy document, but you thought it would be better if you could send them some really short, crudely put together smartphone films.
That's right. Yeah.
That story. Could you remind us of the story? Because nowadays more fundraisers are getting with it and doing films instead of proposals. But remind us of that story, and then B, your view nowadays. Do you still make use of film in your fundraising practice?
So yes, that was a lot of fun. Again, I think it will come back to your donor, so it's knowing your donor. But that particular donor, I know that he was not one who really wanted to read very lengthy documents. And so I felt that, okay, what if I just give him a 2-pager? It's a very, a picture of what the project is, a description of, very high level, this is what this project's setting out to do. And then I actually reached out to staff overseas. So I had one project in Malawi, one project in India, one project in Nepal, and I reached out to our partners over there in the countries where we're working and asked them to put together a 30-second video of what they're doing, what it's all about, and thank you for your interest. And what came back from one of them was just like, wow, that was unbelievably inspiring. One of them came back was so dull, and I had to go back and say, look, maybe a few more, not just you talking at the camera, maybe show us somewhere where you're working in one of the hospitals. But that for him was really good. And actually what I loved about it was because it wasn't fancy, it wasn't glamorous. Someone just picked up a phone, but they were able to personalize that. So they're able to say, hey, Rob, thanks so much for showing an interest in what we're doing. And here's a director of a hospital taking the time to speak to this individual about who they are and what they're about. So that was quite exciting. And he then, in turn, said, okay, look, I'd like to give a £50,000 donation between these two projects. But and yes, in the second part of your question, I use it all the time now. So I love to try and have videos, and I don't like the polished fancy videos. I really prefer that more personalized, I guess, rough and ready type videos.
Yeah, and literally when you fly out tomorrow, you're going to take a smartphone with you. You're not going to take a fancy, expensive camera.
Nope.
Your tool of choice is a smartphone, and then some cheap or free editing software on your smartphone, and then sometimes you might get a professional editor to do some things, but the key thing is you're not doing it with a big budget.
No, and I work for small organization or medium-sized organization. I have done in the past with EMMS International as well. So don't have the massive budgets for big fancy films, and so from that perspective, it suits that as well. But actually, I think it actually is better as well, because you, as I say, it's got that more rough and ready, real feel. For the donor's point of view, this is genuine, this is real. They probably don't want me to spend hours working on a fancy video for them. They might feel that's a bit unnecessary use of public or of charity money, and so it really does kind of play into that as well. It doesn't cost us a lot of money, it doesn't take a lot of time, and it just adds so much more, I think, than a lengthy document.
So Tony, a couple of minutes ago you said obviously step one is understand the donor, and some trusts and donors and companies are going to want lots of stuff written down in more detail. But I sense that in the last few years, much more often, if a supporter asks you to put together a proposal, the amount of written words you send them has got shorter and is more likely to be 1, 2, or 3 pages than it would have been 6 years ago. And the number of times you include a supporting smartphone film to bring it to life has increased. And A, have I guessed that correctly? And B, have you got a couple of, obviously on our Bright Spot Members Club, we've got a little training module that Nikki Bell put together for us, because she's great at this stuff, where she offers some tips. But from your own practice, if someone's thinking, I really must do more of that, but I don't know where to start, or I'm a bit nervous about X or Y, Top of your head, a couple of tips that might help someone get going and do this more successfully?
I guess it's to keep it lighthearted if you're going to do a film like that. It's to keep it personalized. Address the person by name. Or if you're wanting to do multiple people, you can do different takes. But keeping that personal bit's really, really key. But also just making it more storytelling as well. And don't forget that the same rules apply then to other fundraising type work. So, you want, if you're interviewing somebody, you want them to tell a story, not to just talk at the camera. And for me, it's trying to take away the cringe value a little bit. That's can sometimes creep in there, just making it probably a little bit more matter of fact and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is what we're all about. Thank you so much for showing interest. Kind of keeping it that kind of high level. For the more detailed things, probably best to keep them to a document, and your donor can read them if they choose to, but maybe not keep those in the video because that kind of defeats the purpose of it. That'll be my take on it.
Yeah, fantastic top tips. And from learning from Nikki Bell, it seems to me that the skills themselves really are not that hard, and lots of people are using similar skills the way they use their phone in their home life. It's as much about a belief and a confidence that it's appropriate to use your smartphone in this way when you're doing your work. If I may, slightly different kind of question now, Tony, because as you know, for the last couple of years, we've had an online portal where people can learn fundraising skills, get inspired, get stories like these, and it's called Bright Spot Members Club. And you've been a member since pretty early on, I think, for a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I found it really interesting and really, really encouraging for me. I guess the main thing that I really enjoy about having a portal is that sometimes when you go to these fundraising conferences, you get given some really gold nuggets of information, maybe some really amazing stuff. But for you at that moment, it just wasn't relevant. And, so for me, that's quite a key thing for me, that I like things that are relevant to me right now. So just recently, my chief executive asked me to have a look at the kind of some of the thank you letters that were going out from the organization. And so I jumped on the portal and I saw some really great interviews with, I can't remember who it was with, but it was, really, really useful.
Who's an expert.
Yes, that was it.
The thanking process and thanking creativity, yeah.
Yes, and it was just gold, but to have it at the time I needed it, rather than, wanting to, go along to a conference where I might have had that information, but I wasn't using it right there and then, so it wasn't useful to me. Also then, from a cost point of view, up in Glasgow, there are some great events that are happening more and more, I guess, but often it's down to London. So for me to then travel all the way down to London, then to go to a conference, which some things may be useful and some things may not be, can really add up in terms of amounts of money. So just being able just to jump on my computer and kind of look up a video, but probably similar to the coaching with Kim that I've done. It's for me having things that are relevant to me right now and being able to look at videos of that, or being able to speak to somebody about a particular issue. That for me is much better than going along to the bigger conferences.
Yeah. And certainly a lot of the driving force for why I set it up is I know that success in fundraising, as success in life, is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. It's not about what you do on one given day or one particular inspiring course. To get these kinds of uplift in numbers, it's a long old haul. And we wanted to create something that would support you across that journey, rather than hope that you'd remember where your notes were from 7 months ago. And Tony, just before we finish, I often just ask some more rapid fire style questions.
Sure.
If you've got a few more minutes, I'll just jump in, and some of your answers might be similar to something you've said before, or maybe it's a bit different, whatever comes into your head. Idea 1, in the last 5 years, Tony, has there been a new belief or habit or behavior that has most helped you in your job?
I would say the habit of stopping and pausing and really thinking about what I need to do to hit the budgets that I need to hit, to work smart, not hard, although preferably work both. But figuring out, okay, what is it that I need to do that will increase income, rather than just, keeping my diary very busy. So yeah, just that stopping and reflecting and pausing.
If, metaphorically speaking, you could have a giant billboard which all fundraisers or charities would see, what might it say and why? Could be a few words, could be a quote,
That's a great,
short paragraph, quote from someone, whatever you like.
That's a great question. I think for me, it would be failure is your friend. And the reason I say that is because I think so often we think failure is the opposite to success. But for me, success needs failure. And once you have that little mind shift as to why failure is needed, it makes you less afraid to make mistakes. And it maybe makes you less afraid to try new things or put yourself out there in a way that you haven't before. So for me, probably failure is your friend.
Love that. Thank you. And I know that I'm a big fan of getting better at stuff because I read a lot. Some people learn in different ways. I don't know how you are on this one, but does there happen to be a book that you found especially interesting or helpful to your thinking in your career over the last 6-7 years?
It was a book I read, I started to read many years ago, but I keep picking it back up, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one particular area, which is on time management. And just, I've got 4 kids. I've got a busy job. I just finished an MBA. It was just been busy. But that's really helped me keep my focus on the things that matter most to me, which are my family and my friends, and keeping my sanity. But yeah, that for me, that book is really amazing book. That is very values based. And gets you back to what is important to, what's important in life.
Yeah, I remember that the later chapters really bring home that values piece. And I also, there's a pattern developing. I'm understanding much of your success, Tony, can be attributed to this theme you've been talking about, which is do the important stuff, not just the urgent stuff.
Yes.
Chapter 3, isn't it, of the 7 Habits book? It's that
Yep.
We read that book, it really helps you tune into not just be busy, not what is screaming loudest, but
Yep.
to pause earlier in the day and be thoughtful as to what is most important to help me get me to where I want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've reminded me of a chapter I need to reread right now. Thank you. Next question. What failure or seeming failure in a way helped set you up for a later success?
There's probably too many. But no, I imagine the biggest for me was before. So I mentioned before that I had had a brief stint as a recruitment consultant, and it didn't go as well as I hoped. So it was the one kind of time in my life I'd had my daughter was born that year, and life just got the better of me, and I didn't quite do the business development piece, and I didn't do it well enough that 6 months down the line from that, I really suffered and didn't have the pipeline there, and ended up, having a mutual agreement to leave kind of that organization. But it was a kind of a humbling moment for me, but it was very much set in stone that any time now that my pipeline is at the early stages is starting to dwindle at all, I get that fear within me, but like a healthy fear, where I'm like, I need to work, I need to get out there, I need to meet more people. My meetings every week have to be at a certain level. I just don't allow myself to dwindle on that. But for me, that was a big failure, but also such gold for the success that I've had.
So wise words. If the listeners in high value fundraising need an extra impetus to think about, can I somehow solve the problems of how to get some more of our potential supporters or existing supporters to come to our event or to meet us for a quick informal cup of coffee, and how can I creatively, sometimes bravely, solve that? Next question, similar in a way, but in case there's a different answer, what advice would you give to a smart, determined person who's just entered the fundraising profession?
I think for someone who's just entered the fundraising profession, it's to, I guess, be that sponge to listen to others who have made the mistakes before you, to have that very humble, I guess, way of approaching things and say, look, what can I learn? Never think that you know better, and just always have that kind of learnable, approachable, teachable character.
Fantastic. And there's various bits of advice which are often broadly right, but they can be misinterpreted, I think. Is there a piece of advice that you sometimes hear people saying which they should ignore, or they should be careful about just kind of following because it can be misunderstood?
Quite often I hear negative things said about the state of affairs, which are true. But for example, Brexit, for example, people just don't want to hear what I have to say. You're annoying people, you're pestering people. And what I've learned over the years, and Kim has very wisely led me away from, is that these are assumptions, and we need to be clear. Our heads need to be clear of those assumptions. And yes, Brexit will be really affecting some people, but it won't be affecting everybody. And yes, some people might find it a pest, but actually you might be adding value to somebody else. And so just to clear your assumptions and not believe a lot of the lies that you hear, that, everything's doom and gloom, everything's, I'm a pest to everybody, and really challenge those assumptions within yourself.
Really helpful, thank you. And finally, I've always seen you as a positive person, a can-do kind of a person who brings a certain energy to training days and to fundraising. But assuming that you're just as mortal as the rest of us, and you sometimes have tough days, setbacks, what do you tend to do to handle stress, to become more resilient, to bounce back when those days happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't do fundraising without having a lot of rejection and a lot of days where things just don't go your way. So, for me, for me personally, it's exercise. So for me, it's getting out and having a run, bike ride. I cycle to work, so it's just I'll take all my anger and frustration out on my bike. Which is probably good for the kids when I get home as well. But it's just that sense of, for me, just having that outlet and having that place to put my frustration and that stress. And also just to remember to have that big picture, just to remember that, that failure is your friend, and that you will, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, that definitely helps me, is to get out and get on the bike and pedal fast.
Keep going. Great. So, Tony, so many helpful stories, bits of wise advice. I really appreciate the time you've taken to bring some of these lessons you've learned to life for us in this way. So we need to finish fairly soon, because you've got a pack ready for tomorrow, apart from anything else. Yeah. But if people want to get in touch, are you on LinkedIn or are you on Twitter? How might some people send you a question or send you some feedback?
Yeah, I'm useless in the world of Twitter. I think I do have an account, but I never use it. But yes, LinkedIn, you can get in contact with me there. Yeah, sure. And yeah, I'm always happy to hear from anybody. I hope it has been helpful for some people. I don't know. But yes, there's definitely things that I've learned that it's always good to be able to pass on.
But believe me, Tony, some really interesting lessons you've a learned and b eloquently brought to life with some of your examples. So thank you so much. And also the last thing I'm left with is a sense in you that although you're better at this skill than you were 6 or 7 years ago, you're really clear that we're all just on a journey, and that applies to you as much as anyone else. In spite of the fact that the numbers really are showing that you're more successful and skillful than you used to be. So I love that humble attitude to carry on learning, that comes across really clearly. And thank you so much for making time to share those ideas. I look forward to catching up at another time soon and hear the latest instalment of how you're getting on in your new role. But until that time, Tony Gaston, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Rob, and thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this second part of the interview I did with Tony Gaston. If you liked it, do check out the first half in episode 7, as there are some really good tips and stories there too. If you'd like to see a summary of both episodes, you can find those in the episode notes in the blog and podcast section of our website, Bright Spot Fundraising. And if you found today's episode helpful, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave a review or share it with other people, so that these sessions can help more and more fundraisers. And in case you're curious about the Bright Spot Members Club, or the coaching, or the Major Gifts Mastery Program that Tony refers to in these episodes, all that information is on brightspotfundraising.co.uk. Finally, and most importantly, thank you so much for making time for your own professional development by tuning in to listen to this podcast. I look forward to the next episode when we'll be sharing more Bright Spot stories to help you raise more money, enjoy your job, and make a bigger difference.